Hey everybody, very excited. I've got Troy Gent here with me. Met him a little while ago and very impressed with some of the things that he's doing after he experienced some trauma in his life. But I'll let him kind of talk about those things. But yeah, let's just spend a few minutes and get to know Troy and some of the things that he's done. He's big Marine and had a lot of experience doing Marine stuff. So I don't know if you want to take a minute and tell us a little bit about some of your Marine experiences or your background.
Yeah, so I joined the Marine Corps the first time in 1997, and then I left the Marine Corps in 2001 and went to college. And then I decided to join the Marine Corps again in 2007 and got a commission as a Marine Corps officer. And then I spent another 4 years, so I got out in 2011, and I was in the Marine Corps infantry the whole time. So I did one combat deployment and two peacetime deployments. So my combat deployment was in Afghanistan, and my peacetime deployments were in Okinawa, and I deployed to Thailand, Guam, and Tinian as part of the Okinawa deployments. So
Wow.
yeah,
Saw a lot of battle in Afghanistan.
um, it was kind of like the Wild West. I didn't see nearly as much as some people, but I did get shot at a few times, and we returned fire a few times and dealt with some IEDs and
Huh,
some other stressful situations. So
huh.
yeah,
You're lucky to be here. Yeah, I was talking to Troy before we started the video, and I don't know if I w understand how it would feel to have someone shooting at you that wants you dead. That would that would be very difficult.
it's interesting from a distance. I mean, medieval times you're face to face fighting up close, and when you have a little bit of a distance between you shooting at each other, you don't see the look on someone's face. But I remember one time we were leaving our little base on a patrol, a foot patrol, and I walked past this this guy that was Afghan, and it's like we were looking into each other's souls, and I could tell that he wanted to kill me. And so oftentimes the Taliban in Afghanistan, a lot of times it's whose loyalty do you have at the moment? So who's paying the most at the moment, or who made you uh, the biggest promise? And so friendships in Afghanistan are very fluid, and so it's basically whoever can do you the biggest favor.
Uh-huh.
So the reason this guy was walking into our base, I could tell he wanted to kill me, but the reason he was walking into my base is because he was unarmed and he was coming in to talk to the district governor and probably making a shady deal with him.
Oh.
And so uh, he just put down his gun and was acting like a friend. But when he left the wire, he probably picked his gun back up. So
Huh.
it's that's
Kind of.
how that kind of works over there. So it's the only, well, there's another time that I experienced that. A guy was trying to run us off the freeway, me and a Marine buddy, on our way up from 29 Palms to St. George
Oh.
when I was enlisted. This was in like 2000, year 2000 or something. And I could tell he was pretty hopped up on something. And
Huh.
he came so close to running us off the road a couple different times that I could see his eyes. Like we were looking at each other's eyeballs. And he was in a white truck and we were in a little blue car. So that's how close he was trying to get to us to run us off the freeway. Those are the only two times in my life that I made eye contact with somebody that I knew they wanted to kill me. So
Huh. That's yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting. You had that experience in the States and not on foreign ground.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty of bad people in America too. So
Yeah. The want service people did. That's crazy. Yeah, so one of the things that I was very interested in when I first met you was the experience that you had with a friend that you had in the Marine Corps and getting to know him and then losing a friend. And then what happened what you did after that happened. I don't know if you want to
Sure.
talk about that.
So, my best friend from the Marine Corps, we were enlisted together, and then he went through a Marine Corps enlisted commissioning program, they call it. It's a transition from enlisted to commissioned officer, but the Marine Corps pays for it, put you through school and stuff. And then I got out of the Marine Corps instead. I went to school with the GI Bill, and I didn't think I was going back in the Marine Corps until about 2007.
Uh-huh.
And I realized I need to go back in the Marine Corps to go to war and to get rid of some regrets that I had about my first time in the Marine Corps. And so I went and got a commission the same as Jeff did. And but anyway, in 2023, the early morning of New Year's Day. So about a year ago, Jeff took his own life, and he wasn't in the Marine Corps at the time. He was a civilian. And in 2005, I lost my mother's boyfriend, who was like a second father to me, to suicide as well. And there's been other family members that have struggled immensely with suicide ideation and mental health challenges. So I was telling you a little earlier, I've kind of been baptized by fire when it comes to suicide ideation and mental health and living with that. I haven't struggled much at all with it myself, but as far as living with loved ones and friends that have dealt with it, it's been extensive. So I had written a book, hasn't been published yet, still in its rough draft phases right now. But when Jeff took his own life, I started thinking a lot about the statistics with veterans, and according to the VA, 22 veterans take their life a day in America. And so
Wow.
I've heard the numbers actually higher, but regardless, I started thinking, what could I do as a person what talents do I have that could serve in a capacity where maybe I could save some lives? And so I took Jeff's suicide, and over the course of about half a year, was throwing different ideas back and forth, and I finally came upon the idea of a podcast. And I didn't know how I was going to make money doing that. The reason I wanted to make money to do that was to help the families of veterans and first responders who have committed suicide. So that's my mission, is to help the families of the suicide victims, because what they're dealing with in their trauma, living with the suicide, is extremely immense, and oftentimes they're forgotten. We think a lot about veterans, first responders, those that are committing suicide, and we're like, how can we help prevent suicide? But my main mission and goal is to help the families of those that commit suicide, because they're left behind, right? They're left with the financial trauma, the burden of having to raise the kids by themselves, the burden of having to manage life by themselves, plus living with the trauma at the same time. So it's hard enough to be a single parent. And then it's, double, triple hard to lose your loved one to such a traumatic event. So that's my main mission. My why is because I want to help those families, and also over time, hopefully prevent suicide by building community with my podcast. And my main source of revenue right now, I haven't made any money at it yet, but this is my main source of push for revenue, is to write and tell the stories of veterans and first responders for their families, so they can leave that legacy for their family. So I'll basically go in and interview the veterans, first responders, and then I'll take that interview and I'll write their story based upon it, and then I'll compile it in a book with pictures, if they have pictures of their veteran. I'll compile it in a book, publish that book for their family and loved ones, and so then they have that legacy for their family,
Mhm.
legacy of service.
Mhm. So I think that's huge. Most people that have experienced a trauma like that, um, a lot of times I think they just turn inside. They just focus on the pain that they're suffering from losing a friend, and they don't turn out and try to help other people. So I think what you are doing is tremendous. Um, I know there was one podcast I listened to where you interviewed uh, your friend's brother, I think.
Mhm.
Um, what comments have you gotten from people with some of the work that you've been doing?
Sure. Yeah, everybody that learns my mission is is I would say maybe awestruck, like wow, like what an incredible mission to have. And so that's been my initial experience with people that hear the idea. And so we're in the very beginning stages. And so I think it's going to do amazing things as we're persistent and consistent with content and just getting the word out. So,
Huh. So what happened with your friend and his family? What was the impact? Was he married? Did he have children?
yeah.
I mean,
So
what happened?
he left a 17-year-old son behind with a first wife, and who was understandably devastated. Loved his dad. And then with his second wife, he left her and an 8-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter. So yeah, I mean, he left a lot behind. You know, he had a lot to live for, but I also learning his backstory. I understand, and from personal experience with loved ones, I understand how and why he went down the road that he did. But I think it all comes back to isolation.
Mhm.
I've had my fair share of isolation. Um, I'm trying to get out there and focus on others right now, but I've experienced plenty of isolation and selfishness in my life. So uh, don't consider me a saint by any means.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I, it's a huge problem. I guess I didn't realize it about a week ago. I went to lunch with a guy that works at a mortuary, and he's one of the funeral directors, and he was talking about, I might have my numbers wrong, but I mean, it's very common in southern Utah, Washington County, as many as sometimes two suicides a week, or so it's a huge issue. Um, and so the work that you're doing to try to help, I guess not only the people trying to prevent suicide, but trying to help the people that are left to pick up the pieces. Um,
sure.
so
I believe by doing this and creating the connection and community, by nature, I'm going to prevent suicide among the veteran and first responder ranks. Um, but like I said, my main mission is to help the families because I want the immediate support going to those that are experiencing actual trauma.
mhm,
So, but by nature, we're gonna prevent the suicide. So,
yeah,
not entirely. I'm not gonna. It's impossible for me to be, you know, make it zero. But maybe in the future I can have that goal. I don't know, but that's
yeah.
probably unrealistic. So,
Even one person.
yeah, sure.
So uh,
Everybody has value and something to offer this world. I believe that good things, and I think it's getting them to see what that value is that they have that's going to make the difference. So
right, right. So there was another story that you had told me. I think the first time I met you, um, you were having tremendous back pain, and I don't know if you tell that story about that
sure,
hike and what happened and how you dealt with that pain. But
yeah. So the second time I joined the Marine Corps, I was a lot more unsure of myself. I had a really good job as a UPS driver, and I I was living with a lot of regrets because of the way I left the Marine Corps the first time. So I actually joined the National Guard first, but then over the course of a few months and leading up to a deployment with the National Guard, I I realized that I wanted to do it in a, I wouldn't say a better way, because the National Guard, they went through their, and they did a lot of honorable service, you know. And so as far as me personally, I came from the Marine Corps and I felt like I really felt so strong that I needed to go back to the Marine Corps. I just hadn't had the courage to do it until after I joined the National Guard. So I went back in the Marine Corps, and I had a year's worth of training, 3 different officer schools, and in the second school called the Basic School.
How old were you at the time?
I believe it was 2008, so I wasn't quite 30. I was 29.
Oh,
So I was doubting my decision a lot. I was doing really well in the school, but inside my head, I wasn't telling anybody this. It was just all in my head. I really questioned why I was there, and I was doubting my decision. And then on a particular hike, the pack straps, I had to carry a flag for 2 weeks as part of my billet. And I was having a particularly bad day as far as pain goes. My arms went numb, and I was in a lot of pain on that hike. And we take a break every 50 minutes. So we took a break. I sat on my pack. I took my helmet off my head, and I put my face in my helmet like this, because I didn't want to see anybody else see me cry. And I just started weeping. It was just the floodgates opened, and I was just talking to myself in my helmet. Well, I guess I was talking to God, actually. So I said, God, what am I doing here? I'm in so much pain. I feel like I don't have a purpose here. Like, what do you need from me? What am I doing? And this is while I was crying. And all I heard was the words, stop thinking about yourself and go help somebody else. And so, I can't imagine in that state where I felt so sorry for myself that I would tell myself those words, right? So the only explanation I have, and I've always been a man of faith, so the only explanation I have is the definite words that came into my mind was from God, and so, or the Holy Ghost, or my guardian angels, or something, right? But regardless, it was a message from God. So I decided from that moment on that I was going to start helping other people in any way that I could. And so on the hikes, even though I was in so much pain just from carrying the weight that I had to carry, I decided to start dragging females that were in our platoon through these hikes, in our company, I mean, because they were falling out. And if they fell out of 2 hikes, I think they were going to get dropped from the class. And so I pulled all 3 of them, sometimes 2 at a time, through the hikes. They just grabbed onto my pack, basically, kind of like created like a monkey trap for their fists, so they couldn't let go.
mm-hmm.
And I would drag them through 6, 9, 12-mile hikes.
Wow.
And by me putting more weight on myself by helping other people, in the Christian faith, they talk about yoking ourselves to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And what was going on was they were yoking themselves to me, and I pulled them through the hikes, and they ended up graduating. They passed the course, and they all came up to me after graduation, and they gave me hugs, and they just, with tears in their eyes, said, I wouldn't be here without you. And so, I mean, it's gotten easier to tell that story without crying, but man, the first few times I've told that story, I just couldn't help but bringing up those emotions and just realizing, like, that's what God wants us to do. He
Yeah.
wants us to get outside ourselves, no matter how much pain we're in, and help the other people that are in pain, because that's how we're liberated.
Yeah.
So
That's incredible. Um, when you're in your very lowest state, to kind of put aside your own pain and to go out and that's kind of brutal. God telling you, hey, I know you're hurting. Um, go and help somebody else. That's a huge tool. Have you used that in your life besides just that one time on that hike?
Oh yeah. So uh there was a kid. I was a platoon commander. This is after my officer training. And there was a kid that we were training to go to Afghanistan. We were in the field. And I saw him walking around our temporary barracks that were actually in the field, but they're kind of like a holding station. So we come back, we can shower for a night, and then kind of get a hot meal, and we go back out to the field, kind of thing, without having to go back to our main base or barracks. So I could see him walking around, and he wasn't in my platoon. He was in a sister platoon in the same company, and you could just see the weight on his face and shoulders, like something was really wrong. And he wasn't saying nothing. He wasn't really acting any different. You could just see the darkness covering him. And so I went up to him and I said, hey, bud. He's like, yes, sir. Just looking down. Didn't even want to. I said, I can tell something's wrong. What's wrong? How can I help you? And he says, can we go talk over here? And I said, yeah, let's go talk over there. So, and I had no responsibility to help this kid, right? He wasn't in my platoon. I wasn't his platoon commander. And I could have just maybe turned him over to somebody else, which is what most people probably would have done. But he opened up and he says, I just found out that my wife's been sleeping with another guy that's in the field with us, but is attached to us. So he was like an engineer, this other guy. He was a Marine. So they had been having an affair. And he was just, we all had loaded weapons, all the time, always carrying. We practiced the way we were in combat, right? We always have loaded weapons, carrying them everywhere in the field and stuff. This kid has 6 magazines of M4, M16 ammunition, right? So he didn't have to tell nobody. He just could have kept to himself. And when he saw this guy, I mean, that was his plan. He was just gonna plug this guy full of bullets, right? He was pissed. And just by me listening to him, it took all of the tension off of his shoulders. And he said, like, it just lifted his spirits. And then after he was lifted, I took him to, I think, our company first sergeant. And I says, hey, first sergeant, hey, he's got a situation. The difference was I was able to listen to him first and let all that weight come off of him. And then he was able to go get some help. The problem is a lot of Marines like just suck it up, right? So I was afraid that if he went to somebody else with that heaviness, then it would have ended a lot worse. Maybe he would have gotten psych eval'd or kicked out of the Marine Corps because of mental health problems, something like that. He actually ended up deploying with us and having a great deployment. But so just letting that, just listening to him, listening to his problems, it saved him. So saved him from doing something really, really awful.
Wow.
So another time I was in Officer Candidate School and same kind of situation. I saw this guy. He was in the Marine Corps to become a pilot. And I could tell something was really off. And I said, hey, what's going on, man? Like, I can tell something was really off. And this is every night in OCS, you get, an hour to shower, write letters, get ready for the rack and stuff. And an hour or two. So this was during this time. And there was no privacy in OCS. Squad bays, we live in squad bays. There's a bathroom, a laundry room, and there's really nowhere to go, right? To be private. And so the only exception was the laundry room did have a door, but people are always, other candidates were always coming in and out. And I asked a candidate to stand by the door and not let anybody in. And so me and this other candidate went in, and we were both prior service Marines. And I said, "What's going on?" He says, my girlfriend my fiance just broke up with me, and I'm gonna quit. I'm quitting OCS, and you know, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but you know, I'm gonna same kind of thing. He was gonna do something stupid, and I just listened to him, and then I said, in my faith, priesthood holders can give a priesthood blessing. And basically it's just a blessing from heaven to help you and alleviate suffering. And I said, "Would you be interested in getting a priesthood blessing?" And he said, "Yes, I really need something like that." And so I gave him a priesthood blessing. The next day we woke up, and he had a huge smile on his face, bright as could be. I was like, "Dude, you look good." He's like, "I feel good." He's like, "Everything's gonna be okay." And he ended up becoming a Marine Corps fighter pilot. So
Wow.
yeah.
So your intervention changed a lot of people's lives.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
really,
it's all
I
about.
really feel fortunate that I had those
Uh-huh.
situations. So I've had others, but those are three that stand out right now. So
Yeah, I mean, so one of the huge tools I think we can all have is just opening our eyes. And it's pretty obvious when someone's at a low point in life, the help that they just a simple doesn't take a psychiatrist or a counselor
yeah,
just to sit down and talk with somebody.
yeah. I think the key is asking a lot of questions. So don't jump to conclusions. Ask a lot of questions, because most people. So case in point, last week I was having a really tough time, and someone messaged me on Facebook. "How you doing?" I didn't post anything on Facebook. I'm not that kind of guy. I don't post my life on Facebook. I just post stupid stuff. I don't post my life on Facebook. So she just asked me how I was doing just out of the blue. And I was going through a really stressful time. And I just says, you know, "Since you're asking, I'm going to be truthful with you. I was having a really hard time. But if people are going through a really hard time and you ask enough questions, they will start to open up, and then you'll be able to help them." But I'm not the kind of guy to jump to conclusions. I like to ask a lot of questions, so that, and the worst that can happen is, "Hey, that person just asked me a lot of questions." If nothing is wrong with that person, then you just had a good conversation. But if there is something wrong, it comes up, and then you can get some help for them, or just be that help.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I've talked a lot about some of the issues. You're tired of hearing the issues that I've been through, but that was a big
No,
part
not at
of.
all.
I've talked a lot about that, but I mean, there was a point kind of in my life where it was really low, having a really hard time, and I talked about this in a previous video where I went to a park. There was no lighting at the park. It was completely dark. There was nobody in the park. And I just yelled as loud as I could, you know, "Help me, God."
I've done that a few times.
And yeah, I mean, the heavens didn't open, you know, angel didn't come down, but he did answer. Um, and it's through sending people like Troy. Um, you know, months later, I happened to meet a guy and spent a lot of time, and it was all about connecting and kind of talking through things. And he was a true angel for me in my life. I think he changed things for me. And so what you're doing is huge, helping people and just trying to connect. So
Yeah, I hope we can make a difference with
yeah,
the podcast, and then the business. So
well, I appreciate your time. I don't know if my free subscription time has run out,
yeah,
but
thank you.
but we might have to catch up again and do a second part. But I sure appreciate all of your time and spending here.
Sure thing, Chris.
Thanks.